Living Clean, Living Well is a presentation of the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness and is brought to you by Freedom from Addiction.
Welcome to the show, everyone. We are very glad to be live with you here tonight on CTS television, and it's good to be able to say that and to actually be here. I'll tell you, weather has really been an issue for us for the past month or so, so thank you very much for your patience. Tonight, we welcome back our regular contributor, Dr. Vera Tarman.
Hello, Teresa. Glad to be back.
Yeah, and of course, all of our viewers always say, yay, Dr. Tarman's on. And we'd like to welcome back Lynn MacDonnell, who has been a guest of this show many times. Lynn, it's going to be a pleasure to work with you again.
Thank you, Teresa. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, you bet. Lynn is a psychotherapist that specializes in trauma and addiction, and so we're very pleased to be working with us tonight as we work through a couple of issues and some topics that we're going to be talking about. But I think we would be very remiss if we did not mention the passing of one of Hollywood's bright stars. Everyone seems to be talking about it, and it is the death of Academy Award winner Philip Seymour Hoffman, apparently due to the effects of an overdose. Receiving the word out of New York today that he was found in his apartment, and just such a tragic loss. Dr. Tarman?
Yeah, you know, it's a real tragedy, and I don't know what his story is, why he picked up again, but he had been sober for 23 years, and a year ago he picked up again and started using, and it's a real illustration of how even when the addiction has been dormant for that long, when it comes back even worse. I mean, he started injecting now, and he wasn't before. Like, the addiction just picked up where it started and got worse very quickly.
Yeah, they were mentioning it was heroin. We don't know. All the facts are going to come out over the next weeks, and the bottom line is that we have lost another great talent. And really, it doesn't matter if you're a Hollywood actor or whatever. Every loss to an addiction is just, it's one loss too many. Lynn, if I may get your thoughts on this.
Well, actually, I was driving in tonight, and that show was on, that was on the radio, and I was thinking, why would somebody relapse after that period of time? What tragedy or what trauma went on in his early life? Because it's my experience that relapses are usually as a result of something else that was going on that wasn't corrected, that a core issue that wasn't looked at. So I have to wonder what was going on there.
And that really brings an important point of what we are going to be talking about tonight, and that is trauma and the role that it plays in our life, how we as human beings deal with the effects of trauma. There are many different types of trauma.
Yes, there are.
Yeah, that can go on. And unfortunately, some people, to hide the pain, to cope, are looking, you know, and unfortunately end up into the world of addiction and substance abuse. So tonight, we're going to be talking about that. As always, our toll-free lines are going to be open for anyone that has a general question. Dr. Tarman is here with her wealth of knowledge as medical director at Renascent, and Lynn MacDonnell comes to you with 20 years of experience in addictions counseling and also as a psychotherapist who specializes in trauma. So I've really got an outstanding panel here for you tonight. We are going to be talking about a couple of topics, but if there is something that has been burning deep inside of you that you want to talk to us about, please pick up the phone tonight, give us a call. It doesn't matter if it's off topic, it doesn't matter. Just give us a call, because really that's what we're here for every Sunday when we can get in because of the weather. I'm really hoping it settles down. Aren't you out there as well? So as we talk about trauma, and we talk, you know, as we off the top of the show about the loss of Academy Award winner Philip Seymour Hoffman to an apparent overdose, and Lynn, you were bringing up trauma. I was watching the news stories unfold today, and Dr. Drew, who is you know, a celebrity therapist of note, I guess, in the United States, he was saying that once heroin has you, that you often don't live past the age of 50. And that really drew me back. And I thought, why are you saying that? Have you heard of this?
Not specifically heroin, but addiction, even alcohol. The lifespan of a chronic alcoholic is usually not more than 65. You know, and what is our standard lifespan is anywhere from 72 to 78. So just the ravages of drug use on the body, people just don't survive. But 50, no, I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, that really took me aback, and I thought, wow, first of all, why are you even saying that? But like you said, you know, for somebody to have been clean for 23 years and then bang, he started again in 2012 is what we're hearing. You know, like you said, Lynn, you have to wonder what was going on. I'm wondering, when someone comes in to visit you as a therapist, a psychotherapist, as well as, you know, the medical directorates at Renascent, and you're working with your clients, and they're presenting with a trauma. We've asked this question on the show before. What do you deal with first, the issue or the addiction? The addiction or the issue? Dr. Tarman, maybe you could start us off, and then we can get some input from Lynn.
Well, my take is usually to deal with the addiction first, because my fear is that the person will just re-traumatize themselves if they haven't got the tools to heal themselves. The therapist is only there for the hour that the person is being seen. But if you don't have something to sort of self-soothe, take care of yourself afterwards, you're just going to relapse again. So the trick, first of all, is to get clean and get some tools in place and then get into it. Yeah.
And Lynn, in your therapy practice?
Well, I agree totally with Dr. Tarman. But some people, having said that, some people can never get clean until they deal with the trauma. In the years I worked in addictions, I would find that some people were constantly relapsing, and so there was. They really needed to start working with the trauma, and sometimes it's kind of like a weaving effect. Like you're working with the trauma, you're working with the addiction, always keeping the relapse potential in mind. You know, always taking care of being grounded and providing safety strategies in place so that one doesn't relapse. And sometimes the relapse happens. But as long as the person is engaged, they will continue to work on the trauma and the addiction issues.
And Lynn, you were saying as well, too, it's important to weave it.
That's right.
With the therapy and also dealing with the addictions, right? So it's a delicate process, I'm sure.
It is. And I found when I was working in the field of addictions, we would not deal with the trauma at all, ever, until someone was clean and sober quite a while, you know, 6 months, maybe a year. However, then they kept relapsing, so they were never getting that clean time behind them. It became kind of important to start dealing with the trauma earlier than maybe traditionally would have been thought possible. So we were talking before, it's important, I think, to learn strategies for someone to learn how to ground themselves, to learn how to be safe, as you said, self-soothing, learn those things before so they won't continue to relapse. But if someone's not clean, they're not going to do much trauma work.
No, they can't do any trauma
Not
work.
at all.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about experience, strength, and hope, which is something that you use. Can you explain to us a little bit about that?
Well, experience, strength, and hope is a phrase that's used in the addictions community to describe a person who's had the experience of an addiction as a modeling experience for somebody who's new to recovery, so that they can say, I'm going to tell you my story of experience and strength and hope. And the experience piece is to say, to help the person identify, say, yes, you know, what you've experienced is the same thing that I experienced, so I'm going to believe what you have to say because I know we're on the same page. And then the piece of strength and hope is to say, well, I'm sitting on this side of the table because I've actually found some hope from the recovery that I can also not just share with you my experience, but also my hope. Yeah.
Lynn, do you use that as well?
I do. I use it specifically that. I run groups for men who have experienced sexual abuse. And in running those groups for men, they come into an already existing group. So the men that are there,
yeah, perfect.
They already have the experience, they have the strength, and they offer the hope. And a man comes into my group terrified because, you know, it's hard for men to come forward, and he'll come into that group, and before he leaves that first night, he knows that there's experience there, there's strength there, and he leaves with some hope.
Yeah.
That very first night, it's really amazing to see that, from a trembling person to someone that walks out saying, I think I found an answer here.
And you know, that's why group work is so important.
So important.
I know that people think, especially with this kind of a subject, no, I have to do this only with my therapist because I can't possibly be in a room full of people. But that's the shame that's talking. And this group work, it cuts through that shame.
So quickly, so quickly. People that I work with, I have to talk them into joining the group. It takes a bit because they're, you know, they don't want to walk in a room with 7 or 10 other men and disclose that I've been sexually abused. So, you know, they are uncomfortable with that. But once they get there, their recovery just goes like by leaps and bounds. It's so amazing.
It's because shame is a killer.
Yeah. Lynn is doing amazing work in that area. We're going to be talking a little bit more about your amazing work that she has been doing, and some of her clients were even on Oprah, which was it's a transformational experience that Oprah still talks about. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be taking your phone calls. My guest tonight is Lynn MacDonnell, who is a psychotherapist specializing in trauma and addiction, and of course, the wonderful Dr. Vera Tarman. So we're going to take our first break, but we'll be back with more right after this short break.
It's scary to think that you're going to live the rest of your life without drugs and alcohol when it's all you've depended on. But there is hope. I knew I couldn't do it alone, and treatment allowed me the chance to ask for the help that I needed in order to believe that I could live a sober life. I got the help and support that I needed, and even now that I've left, I still have that support there.
Welcome back, everybody. So glad that you're able to join us tonight. And we're so glad that we're here as well, because as I was mentioning off the top of the show, the weather has really done a number on us getting our live shows to air, but hopefully things will settle down now. So we are indeed live, and it is good to be with you. My guests, as I mentioned before we went to break, Lynn MacDonnell and also Dr. Vera Tarman. Lynn has done some amazing work in the area of male sexual abuse. It is an issue that touched my family with my late brother-in-law, Martin Cruz, and his big vision and goal was that people were able to talk about this, and that there would be help for the male survivor. And Lynn has done some amazing things. We've got 2 workshops to tell you about. So the first workshop is going to be taking place on May 31st. And Lynn, this one's called Safety and Connection, Creating Community to Heal for the Male Survivor.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about that workshop and what they can expect.
Well, first of all, that workshop is offered by the malesurvivor.org team. I've been involved with that organization for over 10 years, and we have been putting on weekends of recovery across Canada and the United States. And they're weekends, and they're very intense weekends. So we have decided to make it a little bit easier for people to attend. We chopped it down. We're offering a one-day experience. If you go on the malesurvivor.org website, you will see people's comments on how life-changing the workshops are. So we're going to take a one-day workshop, bring it to Toronto, and also it'll be so less expensive, because flying to California for a weekend is costly. Yeah. So this will be $100 for the day. Dr. Howard Fradkin of Oprah fame, Jim Struve, and 4 other therapists. There's 6 of us will be there. It's an intensive weekend, and so we have lots of therapists on hand. That's so wonderful. We're looking forward to that weekend. Yes. We're just offering it today.
Oh, are you? Just today?
No, today is the first day. So we
Fantastic.
expect it will fill up quickly.
So if you're in the Southern Ontario region, perhaps maybe you'd like to come into Toronto for it, where can you register? On abusehurts.com. And you can also inquire about scholarship information with Lynn MacDonnell. We're going to be giving you her information a little bit later on in the show. There's a second workshop for women, and this is on June the 6th and the 8th. Is this also a weekend event? It's called Taking Back Ourselves for Women Survivors.
It is. It's also based on the malesurvivor.org weekends. Many of the people involved in that putting on Taking Back Ourselves are people who worked with the Male Survivor team. We have 4 women on that team, and then we'll have a couple of guys, a couple of the male therapists there. And we're offering that weekend for women, Taking Back Ourselves, because so many women have really asked to come to, they wanted something like the Male Survivor Weekend. It's for women who were sexually abused, and we'll see what happens. It's going to be exciting.
And it's in Ohio, is it?
It's in Ohio. We tried to get it close enough so that women from Canada could attend. As I said, we often have them in California or in Georgia, other places, but we tried to make it accessible for women from Canada as well. So that information is available if you go to takingbackourselves.org.
Yeah, that was .org.
And you'll see all the information there.
There. So 2 amazing workshops, folks.
Yes.
You know, often we've had many phone calls of people that have called in and said, you know, my life was touched by sexual abuse and I need some help. I don't know where to turn to. And the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness continues to do great work in that area,
Absolutely.
along with Lynn MacDonnell. So it's great to have you.
They're
with
great
us tonight.
partners.
Yeah. So it's time to open up our phone lines. Are we all set to go?
are.
So glad that you folks are calling in tonight, and that's what this show is all about as well. So let's go to our phones. Line 2, Gary's calling in tonight from Brockville. Hi, Gary. Welcome to the show. Go ahead. You're going to kick things off for us.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I'm a survivor of sexual abuse, and back years ago when that happened to me, I was really quite shy, not really wanting to go to court, and but I'm really happy that now people are really helping people that have been, and I'm really happy that I can see the progress that so needed when I was abused, and that makes me really happy to know that I'll do okay. I'll be a better person. I can survive this and be a real help to somebody else, or go to groups and we can talk together and just not be so sad and keep this inside. We can be healed too, of this type of thing that has happened to us all.
Yeah, Lynn, it's so good for it to be okay to talk about it.
It
right?
is. And Gary, I just want to congratulate you on your courage to call in and talk about this on television. That's amazing. And it would be interesting for you to look at that weekend, that day, in May 31st in Toronto, to come in from Brockville to do that. That would be really exciting. And if you do come, please come up to me and say, I'm Gary.
And she'll remember, too,
I
for
will.
sure. Gary, thank you so much for picking up that phone, and I'm glad that you have found some peace, and because, you're able to talk about this. And I know my late brother-in-law, Martin Cruz, would be very, very pleased, too, because way back when he came forward with his story, a lot of people were very hesitant. It was something that was not talked about, and people suffered in silence, and suffered.
And I know that your husband and your in-laws have said to me on many occasions that if this was going on then, if my group was going on then, he would be alive today. So
yeah. So in his memory and his vision, we keep it going on. Thank you so much, Gary. Line 1, Dale's calling in tonight from Niagara Falls. Hello there, Dale. You're live on our show. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi. Go ahead, hon.
Okay. Really appreciate your time. I have a son that lives out in Victoria. I live in Niagara Falls.
wow.
And he has a brother there about maybe 2-3 blocks away from him. And Justin left here about 5 years ago and went there to live with close to his brother. And he had an addiction problem, and he went to Teen Challenge. And he went there for about a week, and then he managed to get himself over to the island where his brother was, and he tried to get himself stabilized there with finding work and ended up on welfare. And then he found more drugs there, more easier there than here in Ontario. We used to live in Richmond Hill. And it's just been a nightmare for me. I mail him boxes of food, trying not to give him money. I mail him, I do send him money from time to time to help him with things that he says that are positive. Like he's joined a running group twice a week. He has an addiction counselor there for the past 3 years. He's been into detox 2 or 3 times, and just again recently, but he only stayed there 3 days. And they said, oh, he's on Suboxone now, so he can come home. But it's a constant drain on me to the point that I just don't know which way to turn. I just don't know what to do for him. It's been a constant financial burden to me. He ended up getting a job, and then for whatever reasons, he goes to check cashing places and tries to get his money earlier. I bought him a nice computer to help him find work. He goes to a place called GT Hiring. He's done a lot of stuff, but I just can't. I don't know if I was there, would it be any different? Would it be any better?
I'm going to let Dr. Tarman and Lynn weigh in on this. Ladies, have you got enough information to maybe talk to Dale? Dr. Tarman, why don't you start?
Well, it sounds to me, Dale, like there's 2 things that come to mind. One of them is that it sounds like you need to set some boundaries that are going to be both useful for him and also for you. When you're starting to get weary in the way that I can hear that in your voice, that sounds to me like you're not taking care of yourself, and your financial self and your personal self in this situation. And if you set boundaries like, I'm not going to give you any money, and I'll give you love, but I'm not going to give you anything else, you're going to have a lot more energy to give to him. And the other thing I want to say is that those are the kind of boundaries that he may not appreciate that initially, but that's going to get him to pick up the slack, because you're doing it for him, basically. So I'll leave it to see if you have something.
Well, I totally agree. I find that parents, meaning well, really, really can do, I hate to say it this way, but they're almost doing more harm than good, because you know, while you're sending him food, he doesn't have to buy it. While you're sending him little bits of money, you know, he can use it for drugs. So I totally agree with you to set really strict boundaries and take really good care of yourself, Dale, because it's not helping your son.
Yeah,
it's just not helping.
No, I mean, what I can almost foresee what could happen is that you're going to burn out and get angry and then just cut off ties. And he needs his mother's love, but he doesn't need his mother's money and all the rest of it. If you can keep yourself fresh, available in the way that where he really needs to, it's going to be much more helpful for you and for him too.
Dale, I'm curious, if you're still with us, how old is your son?
He's 35 now.
Yeah.
Because Dale was asking, would it be different if I lived in the same place?
No.
Could you guys answer that?
Not at all. Actually,
Don't hold back.
it would probably be worse for you, Dale, because it would be harder for you to say no to his face.
Yes.
It would probably just be worse.
It sounds to me, Dale, just to say, you know, it's hard to be in your situation, and there is support out there for people who are in your situation. I mean, there's a 12-step group that is made just for people who live with addicts and alcoholics. But even if you don't want to do that, there's other support groups. Like, you're not alone. By no means are you alone. And if you're with other people, it's going to be so much easier to set those boundaries.
Dale, are you in any support groups?
No, I'm not.
Would you be willing to maybe try one, and maybe you'd find some not only fellow kindred support, but maybe some helpful pointers that might help you through this situation? Is that a possibility?
That's a possibility. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm willing to do whatever I can to help him. I hate to let him go. I mean, I don't know. It's just like turning him over to God. You know, like what else? I just don't know what to do with the situation.
Well, that's the best thing to do.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. You're turning it over to God or to a higher power or to something other than yourself. You hit it right on the head.
Dale, I'm so glad that you picked up the phone tonight, because we are also here for the parents, the loved ones, the significant others of somebody that's going through addiction. And I hope that what you heard tonight from my panelists is helpful. We are here every Sunday night, and we have different people on all the time that might add a different perspective as well. And if you would, give us a call back and let us know how things are going. Thanks so much for calling in, Dale. Let's go now to line 3, and Kate is calling in. Oh, I've got to...
Well, I just wanted to say, Dale, just if I could just say quickly.
Absolutely.
Check out Al-Anon, and check it out. It's in the phone book. And what they'll do is they're not going to have you focus on your son. They're going to help you be able to deal with the situation and all of the emotions that's going to bring out for you. Sorry, Teresa.
That's all right. No problem at all. I'm glad that you did. That's good. We're going to take another break, but when we come back, more of your phone calls and more from my guests tonight, Dr. Vera Tarman and Lynn MacDonnell.
I've been through multiple treatment centers with my addiction, fighting it for the last 10 years, 17 detoxes, 3 different treatment centers. But they put me into counseling and everything here after my detox, which was the smartest thing I could have ever done. I got the real demons out of me that I wasn't able to do over the last 10 years with all those other detoxes, all those other treatment centers, from private ones to government ones. And this place has actually given me my life back.
Hello, I'm Ellen Campbell, the CEO and founder of the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness. As a charity, we depend on viewers such as yourself to support the programs for First Nations, women and children, anti-bullying, and elder abuse. I invite you to visit our website, see what you can do to share. Any donation over $20 will receive a tax receipt. Thank you so much for all your support.
Welcome back, everyone. Tonight we are talking about general questions about addiction and substance abuse. We're also talking about trauma and the effects that it has on our lives and the correlation that it has with addiction and substance abuse. And always we are taking your general questions. We're going to return now to our phone lines. Line 3, and Kate's been waiting a very long time from London. Kate, go ahead. The floor is yours, and thanks so much for your patience tonight. Have you got a question or a comment?
Hello?
Hi there. Go ahead. It's your turn, Kate.
Oh, hi. Teresa, Dr. Tarman, and Lynn. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
I can hardly hear you. I don't even know if I'm on.
Yes, dear, you're on. Go ahead. Have you got a question?
Hey, listen. You guys sometimes with the speaking is ahead of how the TV shows up, so my sound's turned down, but I'm into my 10th week out of 15 in the post-traumatic stress program, and it's so positive. It's just amazing. Right now, we're into the occupational, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, social, and physical, and environment. It's made such a difference. You know, I've had the 27 years of sobriety, but the trauma, I never understood that I was experiencing such trauma. So, you know, it's just a message to anyone that's listening. Keep going. If you get a chance for Dale, I believe her name was, the lady that called with a son with addictions, Dale, at some point his soul is his own to be able to save, and there are many things that he has accessed and are available to him. And bless your hearts for being there. And after I'm finished this, I'll be going into a 22-week intensive program for the PTSD, because it's complex PTSD. I never knew that that could be like that, but it is. And I'm just so grateful for the people in addictions that have helped me. And I have a daughter that's experienced heroin addiction, and it is a lifelong thing. You know, you're on that. It's a continuum. So, and one other thing, just congratulations to Kat, because I know she got her sobriety in, and I have ran into her different times, and through watching your program faithfully, I heard her voice, and I was so happy to hear that she got clean and she's moving on with her life. So all the best, and for anyone that's out there, just keep on trying. Don't ever give up on yourself.
Kate, I love your spirit. I love your energy. Thank you so much for calling in tonight. You bring up so many great points. I'm just going to fill in for our viewers. Kate mentioned a caller by the name of Kat. She's a lovely lady. At least she always is whenever she calls in. And we were celebrating her accomplishments of being clean and sober. And she had an anniversary, and we were so pleased for her. So, Kate, it's great that you know her and that you were able to celebrate her sobriety as well, so that is awesome. The PTSD, these courses, I have not heard about these before.
But was she saying she was taking a course, or that she's in a program?
It's a program, I guess, poor choice of words, so a program.
Okay, because it could be either one of those. Well, I'm going to let you talk about that.
Well, I'm kind of at a loss as well. There are several programs that are starting up, and they're all relatively new. So it's about
There
time.
we go. Okay.
Yes, relatively new. In the grand scheme of things, we haven't been addressing trauma issues at all. You know, the Ontario government hasn't addressed them at all. It's not something that's coming forward very often. So finally, we're actually starting to look at PTSD and the effects it has, the long-term effects it has. 27 years sober and still not happy with her life, and then she decides something's going on. I need to do something about this. And I see that over and over and over again. Lots of sobriety, or complicated sobriety, not happy sobriety. And you know, you would go into a 12-step room and somebody will say, that person might as well get drunk. They're so miserable. Well, you know, what's going on there? If someone's that miserable, probably something else is going on that they haven't addressed. So good for her that she pushed forward and kept searching and searching till she found something that'll help her. Good for her.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a pretty in-depth program, and just by all of the variables that she was talking about, environment and psychological and occupational, I mean, it really highlights how complex post-traumatic stress, how complex it can touch people's lives in many, many ways, and that it isn't something that you can just sit down and say, okay, I'm going to work with this. It has to be done on a very, very cautious, programmatic basis.
Yes.
Yeah. There is one type of therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, which is one form of trauma work, and it covers all of the different angles because it recognizes that post-traumatic stress is, I mean, it's very complicated, and it requires a lot of, it's not a simple one-to-one thing. Yeah.
No. So when we say PTSD, it's post-traumatic stress disorder? Is the D the disorder?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And often people will, it's often, in many cases, it's really PTSS, post-traumatic stress symptoms. So.
Okay. Yeah. Let's go back to our phone lines, and on line 1 is Steve. Hi there, Steve. Have you got a question for us tonight?
Yeah, I phoned in a while ago. I got a nephew going for post-traumatic stress disorder. I know he was sexually abused, and I was out in Calgary. I didn't know all this stuff was going on. I just wonder, he's going through counseling, but what causes post-traumatic stress disorder? Is it like he's getting bad flashback? He was sexually abused by the idiot, excuse my language. What causes post-traumatic stress disorder? He gets bad flashbacks, all that. And what causes it, my friend? My name's Steve.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
What essentially happens is something terrible happens, some traumatic event happens, sexual abuse or something terrible happens, and what it does is it triggers our fight, flight, freeze response. And whenever you have a memory that's big, like a traumatic memory, you remember that. I mean, the brain remembers big things, either big good or big bad. And unfortunately, when it's such a triggering event and it's hooked into the fight, flight, freeze response, all you need to do is have a nightmare or a picture or maybe somebody that looks like the perpetrator.
Or a smell.
Or a smell. And all of a sudden the panic, the fight, flight, freeze response kicks in. And you get hypervigilance, which is where you're very watchful about everything. You jump at the slightest noise. You get dreams, nightmares. You have intrusive thoughts where the thoughts about the event keep coming in. I mean, it's essentially your panic button that's pushed all the time. And it can be very, very, very distressing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's essentially what post-traumatic stress is. I mean, it takes over a person's mental space and their life, yes.
So what brings them out of that panic mode?
Tools.
Tools. Yes.
And
Strategies.
That's strategy. I mean, first of all, it's recognizing the event, the triggering event, and being able to talk about it, which is where Lynn would come in. So let's get rid of the shame, because if you can't even touch the subject, then how are you going to be able to address the panic response?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a very complicated thing. You want to touch the event, you want to deal with the symptoms, you want to prevent it from happening in the future.
And in talking about the event, it's not just simply, okay, this happened to me then. It's not that simple. It's actually talking about the event slowly, so that when you're talking about the event, you have some kind of strategies in place, so you don't get the flight or fight. And if
because otherwise the event just keeps happening
over and over again.
Yes. Yes.
So Steve, you mentioned that was this a nephew or his?
I think his nephew.
Yeah, a relative has unfortunately gone through sexual abuse. I'd like to just bring it up in case there's been people that are joining us right now just after the top of the hour. I'd like to tell you about 2 workshops that Lynn is going to be taking part in, and one is a men's workshop. So maybe your relative could come to the Toronto area and take part in it. Safety and Connection, Creating Community to Heal for Male Survivors. And Lynn, that one is taking place
May the 31st at Humber College, the South Campus. Humber College has been so wonderful to let us use that space to put this workshop on. And we have 6 very skilled professional therapists that will be there at that campus to put this workshop on. So Dr. Howard Fredkin, Jim Struve, myself, Rob Hawkins.
Rob as well.
You know
yeah,
Rob.
there's some outstanding people that are going to be involved in that. If you'd like to register, please go to abusehurts.com. You can also get some more information about it there as well. Let's go back to our phone lines, and calling in tonight from Etobicoke on line 3 is Kevin. Hello there, Kevin. Have you got a question or a comment tonight?
Hello, yes. I'm inquiring about the rehabilitation places. I've been looking into quite a few of them, and they all seem to between 15 and 25,000. And I'm inquiring, are they any good? Because I've been on OxyContin for about 10 years, less than 10 years. I've been on and off, and several times I've gotten off of it through the outpatient programs. But of course, as you get older, it gets a little harder. And I'm just wondering, are these places worth the amounts of money, which I believe is really high for?
That's a tough one.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of your options, Kevin. Both Dr. Tarman and Lynn can talk about that, and as well as the benefits as to why you would be paying that type of money. Vera, do you want to start things off?
Yeah, there's if a person doesn't have any money at all, there are a couple of options. Salvation Army Harbor Light is a program. It's a 10-week program for men that if you're willing to wait in line to get in, I think it takes a couple of months, 2-3 months. You can get in, and you don't have to pay anything. It's not
And
as
they can help people with
sure.
OxyContin?
Yes, they can help, but you'd have to detox from the OxyContin first. You'd have to do that in any case.
And where would he go to do that?
He could do that at any detox. There's the hospital detoxes. There's the detox. There's a number of different detoxes, some of which are free and some of which aren't. And they're anywhere from 3 to 10 days because you'd have to get off of the OxyContin. And then another place, if you don't mind waiting in line, Renaissance too will have, it's a 3-week program for men, and it too has an OHIP segment. But if you want to get in quickly, right away, then you're going to have to pay the price. And there's a number of them. If you're on OxyContin and you want help getting off, like through Suboxone or something like that, I think Bellwoods is a program that does that. It'll help you do that transition. And that's, I think, a little cheaper than some of the others. So there are options. Yeah, there are options.
So, but Kevin's question is, maybe he has the money. Are they worth it, is what he's asking.
Well, you know, okay, let me say this, and then I'm sure I want Lynn to take it from there. But my experience is that it's always worth it. It's always worth it. And if you put money into it, oftentimes a person is a little more invested into doing the things, because really it's, no matter where you go, it's going to be the same message. Here are the tools that you are going to have to do yourself. And when you're paying for those tools, you're going to do it much more likely than if you just go and hear it and then hope somehow that it's going to take. You have to do the work yourself. And my experience is that when you make the investment of putting money in, you're more likely to listen to the message.
Yes. I totally agree. I totally agree.
Excuse me.
Yes. So you know, you get what you pay for, but if you're willing to wait and you're willing to stay off and use some kind of support system while you're staying off to get into these non-expensive, these programs that are free, it's the same program. It's basically the same. You might not have so many bells and whistles, but you're still getting the same message, the same tools. Not much changes. Yeah. But you have to be willing to invest your time and your effort and maybe your money. So,
sorry. That's exactly it. It's the same program, but maybe without the bells and whistles. And the other thing that you can do is you can just do 12-step programs. And again, you have to do the work yourself. But there are people who do 3 meetings a day. Like, that's what they're willing to do. That's the same as a program, an outpatient program. What is that? 3 to 4 to 5 hours a day. That's what an outpatient program is. If you're willing to do that, it will work in the same way as an outpatient program. It's all about, how far are you willing to do the work?
So some options and some tools there for you, Kevin, some that cost money and some that don't. And I'm really glad that you asked that question tonight. We're going to take another break here on Living Clean, Living Well, but when we come back, more of your phone calls and more from Dr. Tarman and Lynn MacDonnell.
It's scary to think that you're going to live the rest of your life without drugs and alcohol when it's all you've depended on. But there is hope. I knew I couldn't do it alone, and treatment allowed me the chance to ask for the help that I needed in order to believe that I could live a sober life. I got the help and support that I needed, and even now that I've left, I still have support there.
Hello, I'm Ellen Campbell, the CEO and founder of the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness. As a charity, we depend on viewers such as yourself to support the programs for First Nations, women and children, anti-bullying, and elder abuse. I invite you to visit our website, see what you can do to share. Any donation over $20 will receive a tax receipt. Thank you so much for all your support.
Statistics state that it is likely you know a victim of abuse. It could be a friend, a relative, a colleague. It could even be you. 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys will be sexually abused before they reach the age of 18. Please give them hope. Help us make it stop. Go to abusehurts.com and give to the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness.
Welcome back, everybody. Glad to have you with us tonight. And a great resource that I want to mention just before we get back to our phone lines is Recovery Wire magazine. For the viewers that join us every Sunday night, you know that we have had the editor-in-chief, Dee Christensen, on. She's great to work with as well, isn't she, Dr. Tarman? A real firecracker. Just love her. So her latest edition, Recovery Wire magazine. Dr. Tarman, you wrote in that. What did you write about there?
Actually, my subject is the very thing we're talking about. Therapy, first things first, should we do therapy or should it be sobriety first?
There you go. So that's in the latest edition. If you would like your free copy, all you have to do is go to their website at recoverywiremagazine.com, register, and you will get your magazine. Very thought-provoking, very current, and on the edge. It's an excellent magazine. Let's go back to our phone lines now. Line 1, Susan's calling in tonight from Hamilton. Hi there, Susan. You're live on our show. Go ahead.
Hello?
Hi, Susan. Go ahead, hon.
Okay, what I was wanting to know is when I was a child, I was sexually abused, but a lot of it I've forgotten. I was just wondering how I could find out for sure what actually happened to me and possibly the person who had done it to me, which I think I do know, but somehow my mind has gone to where I forget a lot about it.
Yeah. I'm glad you called in, Susan. I really am. And Lynn, if you don't mind answering Susan here,
sure.
Dr. Tarman would like to follow up, but you're the therapist. You go ahead.
Well, Susan, first of all, you probably worked hard to forget this when it happened and forget it for a long, long time. So, you know, you've been successful in forgetting it. And the other thing is, I think that sometimes our memories are gone for a while, or most of them, or just spaces of memories. But as we start working on our therapy, some of these memories come back. And not all of them, but some of them come back. You might want to ask yourself why you want to know what, because your motivation will really have a lot to do with how many memories you get back and what the memories are like. So sometimes it's more painful to have the memories, and sometimes it's more painful to not know. So, you know, therapy is the really only answer. You need to find some way to feel safe, some way to have some strategies in place, so if the memories come back, you'll be able to deal with them.
Dr. Tarman?
I'm not sure I have a lot more to add other than if you don't remember, it might be to your benefit not to remember. And I'm not so sure that it's helpful. I don't know. I'm going to put my hands up on that one and say I don't know.
Yes, I know that some people, it just drives them crazy knowing that somebody knows and I don't. Somebody knows what happened to me and I don't. I understand that. That's really frustrating. However, if you're not, I can't think of any way you would find out except asking your family who were around at the time, and then going in, but first please go into therapy so you have some strategies, some support, some safety, some grounding in place, so that if you do get memories or if someone does tell you what happened, you'll be able to handle it without, without doing yourself more psychic harm.
Susan, have you ever gone through therapy, or is this something you're maybe considering?
Pardon me?
Are you considering therapy, or have you been in it before?
I have been, and I only got to a certain point, and then I couldn't remember, and the person wanted to know if it was someone that's alive, because if they are, and anything was happening again, that they'd have to report it, but I didn't know enough to say.
Yeah, that's one of the things that the therapist is obliged. If they think that there's ongoing therapy, there's an obligation to report that. I guess it makes it difficult to work in this field sometimes.
Sometimes, but also if it's not a child at risk, and if it's if the person who is offending, abusing, isn't a professional. Those are the two. If it's a child at risk, then you have to disclose. If it's another professional, you have to disclose. Other than that, if it's, my next door neighbor and 20 years ago, and I just uncovered this fact. But
Yeah, Lynn, I'm wondering if you'd be so kind, if people wanted to contact you.
Sure.
In your therapy work, how best would they get a hold of you?
Well, best they would either email me, and my email address is lm, like my name, Lynn MacDonnell, lmtherapy.com at gmail.com, sorry.
That one's easy. So LM
Therapy.
Like Lynn MacDonnell, so lmtherapy@gmail.com.
That's it.
And
Or
we've got it on the air for you right now.
Good.
The Cracker Jack crew I've got.
they have. So just email me and ask more questions, Susan. I'd be really happy to help you find some answers. I know that there's a really good program in Hamilton at McMaster, I think. They have a McMaster clinic, deals with trauma and abuse. You might give them a call.
So some options there for you, Susan, and I'm really hoping that does help. And thank you so much for calling in tonight. Dr. Tarman?
I just want to say one thing that we do know about memory in general is that it's not like we have the events in our lives that we just, in our brain somehow, that we just need to uncover. Memory is a very funny thing. Every time you remember something, it changes slightly. It's a very fluid phenomena that is very suggestible, and it's very easy to change, even if you don't want to make it change. And we do it actually intentionally. The more you talk about bad things, the more you can actually make the memory less painful.
Yes.
Because you're changing the memory into almost into a more favorable light. So it's not like there's something back there that I have to do hypnosis or something to uncover it. It might just be, like you said, decayed, gone, and some of it, you'll find some of it. Anyway, just leave it like that.
And I found hypnosis doesn't really work that
No,
well.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So that won't help. Yeah.
Is there ever a possibility with anyone, I'm not talking about Susan, but where they think that maybe there is a memory but there really wasn't? Have you ever come across that?
Yes.
You have?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And how does that happen?
Well, obviously, here's my theory, for what it's worth. The person had an event in their life that made them feel very, very uncomfortable, and they coded it in such a way that it comes back to them as a trauma. But it was just but it was an uncomfortable situation, and it got miscoded, actually.
And that's an example of how memory is not a reliable construct. It just isn't.
Yes.
And there was a whole about 10 or 15 years ago, there was a whole phenomena of I forget what the term was called now, but
false memory syndrome.
False memory syndrome.
Right.
That's right.
I remember hearing that.
Where it was you can make memories very suggestible. I mean, if you had an uncomfortable experience and I said, well, are you sure it wasn't because your neighbor did something? Then it's almost like you're going to have that memory of my neighbor did something, and then that memory develops.
Yes.
There's all sorts of very interesting ways that you can influence memory, and what they found is that therapists unintentionally were influencing their clients. Even if I say something to you right off the cuff, and then contradict it later, you will remember the first statement. Even if I say to you a minute later, no, that wasn't the truth. You'll remember the first thing as the truth. We have a bias.
Yeah.
Like memory is very fluid, very suggestible.
Yeah. Did you want to add anything there, Lynn?
No.
We covered it.
We covered it very well.
We've been talking about trauma tonight and how it works in and plays into addiction and substance abuse, and specifically we've had a number of phone calls tonight about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. We've dealt with it quite a number of times on the show, and something that came up in tonight's conversation that shocked me is that Lynn, you mentioned, and Dr. Tarman too, that the medical community and the therapy community are only starting now to deal with this, and yet it seems that it's been around for so long.
Forever.
What's been the disconnect there? What do you think? What's your theory?
My theory?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's been enough scandal that has come forward that it's becoming clearer that this has been going on for decades. So, that's helped.
Yeah.
Help, but that's a crazy word for that. But that seems to have helped people recognize that this isn't something you just, just get over it. You don't get over it, you know. So that was the thing before. People would always say, they'd go to a doctor, well, it happened a long time ago, so
put it behind you,
and move on. And now we're starting to understand that if they could, they would.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And obviously had.
Yeah. But there's also the understanding of post-traumatic stress in general.
Yes.
You know, in the 60s and 70s, people would have said, just get over it because you can. And we would talk about post-traumatic stress as like things like, when you're in the war and your best buddy is blown up in front of you, and you're going to remember that. But then since I don't know if it was Judith Herman's book.
Yes, Trauma and Recovery.
Trauma and Recovery, where they started to say it doesn't have to be the big thing. It could be the small event, like the sexual abuse that occurred multiple times in a person's life. That's pretty big, and that can cause the same kind of symptom as your buddy blowing up in front of you.
Exactly.
But the medicine wasn't willing to acknowledge that phenomena until really the feminists put it on the table and said, look, this is an issue.
Yeah.
And it takes a while for medicine to kind of wake up to those things.
Right. And the other thing that wasn't being recognized or talked about for years is sexual abuse. And I just wanted to say before we wrap up tonight, and we are getting close, but my late brother-in-law Martin Cruz would be so proud right now that we are doing a television show talking about trauma, talking about sexual abuse, telling about people about your great work, about the workshops that are available. I think it is good. And I commend all of the callers that have called in the past couple of years, and the ones that have called tonight and that have said, this happened to me. And Martin always said, I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim of sexual abuse. I am a survivor, because then they didn't win. I'm a survivor. So I commend all of the survivors that called in tonight, that had the courage and the conviction to stand up and say, this happened to me. And, we had some phone calls that called in tonight, like Gary, that started things off, that, he's talking about it, he's taking part in therapy workshops.
Which is great.
And he wanted to give hope to others that if you make that step and it's okay to talk, and like you were saying with your workshops, that can be transformational as well.
It is. It so often is.
Because men come together.
You walk in a room with 40 other men. And now you're not alone anymore. You look around, it looks like anybody else you would know. It's a wonderful experience.
So, folks, don't forget, you can get all the information on the workshops on our website at abusehurts.com. And I think we're going to run your workshop, the information over the next coming weeks. We'll refer to it. We'll bring it up. And and I'm just so pleased that we were able to talk about this as well. And not just sexual abuse, which is great that we're talking about, but trauma in general. And really, we just tip the top of the iceberg.
Oh, really?
When it comes to that.
We needed a 4-hour show.
We do. So we're going to take our final break here on Living Clean, Living Well, but when we come back, we're going to have some final thoughts as we wrap up this great evening of conversation. We'll be right back.
I've been through multiple treatment centers with my addiction, fighting it for the last 10 years, 17 detoxes, 3 different treatment centers. But they put me into counseling and everything here after my detox, which was the smartest thing I could have ever done. I got the real demons out of me that I wasn't able to do over the last 10 years with all those other detoxes, all those other treatment centers, from private ones to government ones. And this place has actually given me my life back.
My guest tonight, it has been an amazing panel because we have had Dr. Tarman, who is our regular contributor, and Lynn MacDonnell with years and years of experience, not only in therapy but also within addiction. So some final thoughts, Lynn?
Well, finally, I'd like to say one of the themes of our events, dare to dream that you can recover. Dare to dream that you can feel full and happy and have a full, rich life. Dare to dream.
Dare to dream. It's yours.
It's yours.
Dr. Tarman?
Oh, and just to say that, this show is, what we're shame busters. And,
very good.
you know, your workshop and this kind of a show and people calling in. I mean, you gave a rousing speech there, Teresa. You know, thank you, callers, because you're helping break the shame down for the other callers who are not ready to call yet.
Yeah, and really there should be no shame. There should be, the shame should be on the perpetrators that have done this to society.
Exactly.
But only by talking about this, we're going to take it out into the front and make it so that we're going to eradicate it from all areas of society, because I've always said our most precious resource is our children and you. Thank you for watching tonight. Thank you to my panelists. We will see you again next week, everybody. And until then, have a good one.
Living Clean, Living Well has been brought to you by Freedom from Addiction and is a presentation of the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness.